The drama surrounding Jake Paul's preparation for Anthony Joshua has now crossed a line from bold ambition into something far more sobering, almost unsettling, for anyone who understands what heavyweight boxing truly demands. What initially looked like calculated bravado has slowly been reframed by bruises, swelling, and quiet admissions that life inside a heavyweight training camp is not something that can be gamed, hacked, or outsmarted through confidence alone. As more details leak out from sparring sessions and analysts begin connecting the dots, the illusion of control starts to crack. Reports of Jake Paul suffering visible damage in camp have not come from gossip or rival camps, but from Paul himself and from observers who know exactly what they are seeing. The swollen eye, the facial bruising, the battered look that appeared after sparring sessions with elite heavyweights were not cosmetic inconveniences. They were physical receipts. When the right eye takes repeated damage, it often tells a simple story. A stiff jab, delivered with timing and authority, landing again and again before adjustments can be made. Against orthodox heavyweights with reach, experience, and discipline, that jab becomes more than a setup. It becomes a warning. Sparring with fighters like Lawrence Oakley, Frank Sanchez, and Jared Anderson is not a controlled experiment. These are not influencers pretending to be boxers. These are men who live inside the rhythms of violence for a living. Even when sparring is meant to be measured, even when it is not full throttle, the disparity shows up immediately. Distance becomes unfamiliar. Timing becomes unforgiving. Shots arrive from angles that do not exist at lower levels. Jake Paul stepping into that environment was brave, but bravery does not reduce impact. What seems to have unfolded over those weeks in camp was a prolonged awakening. Analysts described it as humbling, and that word matters. Jake Paul has always thrived in spaces where confidence bends reality. He has been able to outwork, outmarket, and outbelieve his opponents. But heavyweight sparring strips that advantage away. There is no room to negotiate with physics. There is no algorithm for absorbing punches from men who weigh 40 pounds more, punch with intent, and understand how to cut off space. Those sessions did not just test Jake's chin. They tested his assumptions. Observers who have watched Paul struggle competitively with fighters like Tommy Fury can reasonably imagine what happens when he faces men who operate several levels above that. Faces do not always tell the full story of sparring, but patterns do. Repeated injuries, consistent contact, and visible where suggests that adjustments are not coming fast enough. You can bring in elite heavyweights to learn what is coming, but learning does not guarantee avoidance. Sometimes it simply confirms inevitability. This is where sympathy briefly enters the conversation. Not because Jake Paul is an underdog without reward, but because the scale of what he has taken on is becoming clearer in real time. Then reality snaps back. The reported earnings erase most of that sympathy. The money attached to this fight exists precisely because the risk is so extreme. High danger creates high reward. The market understands what many fans do not want to admit. People are paying to see what happens when belief collides with hierarchy. Anthony Joshua sits at the top of that hierarchy, and the danger he presents is not hypothetical. It is structural. His lead hand controls distance. His jab sets traps. His left hook punishes hesitation. His right hand ends nights. Even critics who question Joshua's psychology do not question his ability to erase mistakes instantly. And that is what separates him from the heavyweights Paul has been sparring. Joshua does not need accumulation. He needs opportunity. Some argue that these brutal sparring sessions are exactly the point. That Jake Paul must experience the punishment now, so he can avoid it later. There is truth in that logic, but only to a degree. Learning requires time, repetition, and gradual progression. The clock does not favor Jake Paul. You cannot compress a decade of heavyweight experience into a few months without consequences. Range control, defensive instincts, and survival reflexes are not software updates. They are scars earned over years. The footage and descriptions coming out of camp suggest Jake is still getting hit cleanly, still struggling with distance, still absorbing shots that would be catastrophic under fight conditions. And those shots are not coming from Anthony Joshua. That distinction matters more than anything else. If these are the results against high-level sparring partners, what happens when the pressure is real, the gloves are smaller, and the intent is absolute? Analysts have framed moral victory scenarios for Paul, lasting 3 rounds, landing 1 clean shot, surviving the opening storm. That framing alone reveals how tilted this matchup is. For a former Olympic champion and 2-time heavyweight world champion, moral victories are not part of the conversation. For Jake Paul, they're already being discussed as potential success metrics. That gap is not disrespectful. It is honest. And yet, this is where the story becomes complicated. Because Jake Paul's entire career exists in spaces where disbelief fuels momentum. He has consistently stepped into rooms where people said he did not belong. He has been delusional enough to try, disciplined enough to prepare, and smart enough to monetize every step.